Welcome back to Leadership Unpacked. Today, we're diving into a critical topic for any leader: effective decision-making. We all know that making decisions is at the heart of leadership, but how do you make decisions that are both sound and swift? That's where understanding cognitive biases and developing a balanced approach comes into play. We'll explore insights from Daniel Kahneman's Thinking, Fast and Slow, a groundbreaking book on the psychology behind decision-making. We'll also break down real-life examples from Amazon, Ford, and SpaceX. By the end of this episode, you'll have actionable strategies to help you make smarter decisions and create a decision-making environment in your team that promotes confidence and clarity. To start with the foundation of effective decision-making, let's explore one of the key concepts in Daniel Kahneman's Thinking, Fast and Slow, the idea of System 1 and System 2 thinking. Kahneman explains that our minds use two distinct systems to process information and make decisions. System 1 is our fast, automatic, and intuitive way of thinking. It's the gut instinct that helps us make quick decisions without much thought. System 2, on the other hand, is slower, more deliberate, and analytical. It's the system we engage when we need to think deeply or tackle complex problems. Each system has its place. System 1 is perfect for everyday tasks, like recognizing faces or reacting to immediate dangers. It's quick, efficient, and lets us respond rapidly. But because System 1 relies on heuristics and past experiences, it's prone to errors, especially when we face new or complex situations. This is where System 2 comes in. System 2 allows us to pause, analyze the details, and make careful decisions. However, because it takes time and effort, our brains prefer to use System 1 whenever possible. Kahneman's research shows that effective decision-making is about knowing when to engage System 2, even if it feels more effortful. A fantastic example of balancing System 1 and System 2 thinking is Ford's decision to launch the Mustang in the 1960s. Back then, the automotive industry was highly competitive, and Ford needed a way to appeal to a younger, more dynamic market. Lee Iacocca, who was then Ford's general manager, had a strong intuitive sense, System 1, that a sporty, affordable car would resonate with younger consumers. But he didn't rely solely on his gut feeling. Instead, Iacocca engaged in extensive market research, gathering data on what consumers wanted in a car. He and his team carefully analyzed potential price points, design features, and manufacturing costs. System 2. After balancing this market analysis with his initial intuition, Iacocca felt confident in launching the Ford Mustang in 1964. His decision paid off spectacularly. The Mustang was an instant success, selling over 1 million units in its first 2 years and establishing Ford as a leader in this new market segment. By balancing instinct with analysis, Iacocca was able to take a calculated risk, showing us the power of knowing when to tap into System 2 thinking. Ford's story highlights an essential point. While intuition can inspire bold decisions, supporting it with System 2's careful analysis helps minimize risk. Effective decision makers know how to use both systems as needed, drawing on the best of each. And let's be real, imagine if Ford had relied solely on instinct without any market research. We could have ended up with a minivan marketed as a youthful sports car. Sometimes a little analysis can make all the difference. In situations where time is of the essence, System 1 thinking is often invaluable. Take emergency room doctors as an example. In a high-stress environment like an ER, doctors often rely on intuition and experience to make life or death decisions in seconds. When a patient arrives in critical condition, there's no time for lengthy analysis. Doctors use System 1 thinking, drawing on patterns and experience to recognize symptoms and act quickly. But here's the interesting part. While their decisions appear instant, they're actually grounded in years of System 2 training. Medical professionals spend years building a foundation of knowledge, analyzing cases, and training for various scenarios. When they're in the ER, their System 1 responses are reliable because they're based on extensive System 2 groundwork. The takeaway here: in high-stakes, high-speed situations, System 1 thinking is essential, But to make it effective, you need to put in the work beforehand, just as doctors do. This training provides a framework so that when intuition kicks in, it's based on solid ground. On the other end of the spectrum, we have Warren Buffett, the legendary investor known for his methodical System 2 approach. Investing is an area where rushing can lead to costly mistakes, so Buffett takes his time, analysing every detail of a potential investment before making a decision. Buffett famously avoids quick, emotionally driven decisions and is known for his in-depth research into a company's fundamentals, competitive positioning, and long-term outlook. His process often takes weeks, even months, because he believes that investing in a business is a serious, long-term commitment. Buffett's success shows how important it is to engage System 2 for complex decisions that have long-term consequences. Buffett's disciplined approach to investing reminds us that System 2 thinking isn't just about making the right choice, it's about making a well-informed choice. He's an example of how taking the time to fully engage System 2 can lead to better, more reliable decisions. So, when should we use System 1 versus System 2? Kahneman's research suggests that the best leaders know when to engage each system depending on the situation. Use System 1 for routine, repetitive decisions, or when you need to make quick calls. If you've handled similar situations many times before, your intuition will often guide you correctly. Engage System 2 for new, complex, or high-stakes decisions. When the potential impact is significant, it's worth slowing down to analyze all the details. Take pilots as another example. They're trained to use System 1 for routine decisions during a flight, checking instruments, adjusting altitude, and handling routine communication with air traffic control. But when faced with an emergency, they switch to System 2, relying on their training to follow procedures, troubleshoot issues, and communicate clearly. Pilots are a perfect example of professionals who know when to rely on each system based on the demands of the moment. If you're facing a big decision, try asking yourself, is this a familiar situation or is it unique? For routine issues, trust your intuition. But for decisions with major consequences, take a step back, analyze the information, and engage System 2. This simple question can help you avoid relying on gut instincts in situations where a thoughtful approach is needed. In summary, Kahneman's concept of System 1 and System 2 thinking reminds us that effective decision-making requires a balance between instinct and analysis. Leaders who know when to trust their gut and when to dive deeper are better equipped to make sound decisions. Whether it's Ford launching the Mustang, ER doctors making life-saving calls, or Warren Buffett's careful investing, the right approach depends on the context and potential impact of the decision. Next, we'll look at some common cognitive biases that often trip us up when making decisions and how to recognize and overcome them. Stick around as we break down the pitfalls of confirmation bias, availability bias, and anchoring bias. One of the most important things Kahneman teaches us in Thinking Fast and Slow is that effective decision-making isn't just about knowing when to use intuition or analysis. It's also about recognizing and overcoming cognitive biases, those mental shortcuts that often skew our judgment. Kahneman identified several biases, but today we'll focus on 3 of the most common ones that affect leaders: confirmation bias, availability bias, and anchoring bias. Let's start with confirmation bias, our natural tendency to seek out information that supports what we already believe and to ignore evidence that contradicts it. Confirmation bias can be dangerous in leadership because it leads us to favor information that aligns with our preconceptions rather than objectively assessing all available data. A famous example of confirmation bias in action is Blockbuster's response to the rise of digital streaming. In the early 2000s, Netflix approached Blockbuster with an offer to partner on a digital rental model, but Blockbuster's leadership dismissed the idea. They believed customers would continue renting DVDs in-store and saw Netflix as a niche service with little impact on their core business. Blockbuster's leaders were so focused on their traditional business model that they didn't recognize the shifting consumer behavior toward digital streaming. By only seeking information that confirmed their belief in in-store rentals, they missed a major shift in their industry. As we know, Netflix went on to revolutionize streaming, while Blockbuster's failure to adapt led to its downfall. To avoid confirmation bias, actively seek out opposing viewpoints. For big decisions, consider appointing a devil's advocate, someone who can question assumptions and bring up counter-arguments. By embracing alternative perspectives, you'll avoid becoming too attached to a single viewpoint. Think of it like choosing a movie on Friday night. Sure, you want to watch your favorite genre, but maybe someone else has a great suggestion you wouldn't have considered otherwise. Next, let's talk about availability bias, the tendency to overestimate the importance of information that comes to mind easily, often because it's recent or emotionally impactful. This bias can distort our perception by making us believe that more accessible information is more representative than it actually is. A well-known example of availability bias is Toyota's response to the 2010 recall crisis. After reports of unintended acceleration led to a massive recall of Toyota vehicles, media coverage was intense and emotional, creating a sense of widespread panic about Toyota's safety standards. Although Toyota's overall safety record was strong, the company had to contend with availability bias, as customers perceived Toyota cars as less safe, primarily due to the media's focus on the recall. Toyota responded by confronting availability bias head-on. They increased transparency, conducted extensive safety checks, and invested heavily in rebuilding public trust. By acknowledging the bias and addressing customer concerns directly, Toyota managed to regain its reputation over time. This case shows how understanding availability bias can help leaders address skewed perceptions proactively. To counteract availability bias, focus on data and long-term trends rather than recent, emotionally charged events. When making decisions, ask, is this representative of the larger trend or just a recent anomaly? Reminding yourself of the bigger picture can help you avoid overreacting to isolated events. Finally, let's discuss anchoring bias, the tendency to rely too heavily on the first piece of information we receive, even if it's not relevant or accurate. Anchoring can skew our judgment by making it hard to adjust our thinking once we've latched onto an initial figure or idea. A classic example of anchoring bias occurs in salary negotiations. Research shows that the first number mentioned in a negotiation often has a strong influence on the final outcome. For instance, if a candidate anchors the conversation with a high salary expectation, it tends to drive the employer's offer up, even if that initial figure was higher than anticipated. Anchoring bias in salary negotiations highlights how our brains can get stuck on initial numbers, which influence our perception of value. It's a reminder of how important it is to come prepared with accurate, fair information and to avoid letting the first number dictate our decision-making. To combat anchoring bias, start by gathering a range of data before setting an initial value. In negotiations, try making the first move so you can set a well-researched anchor. And if you're on the receiving end, take a moment to recalibrate, review multiple perspectives, and avoid letting that initial number define the outcome. Understanding biases is one thing, but overcoming them is a different challenge. Here are a few strategies to help reduce the impact of these cognitive biases in your decision-making process. 1. Seek diverse perspectives. One of the best ways to overcome biases is to bring in diverse perspectives. When teams are made up of individuals with different backgrounds, they're more likely to question assumptions and offer alternative viewpoints. For instance, a team with members from marketing, finance, and product development will naturally approach a decision from different angles, reducing the likelihood of confirmation or anchoring bias. 2. Use data to ground decisions. Where possible, use data to inform your choices. Availability bias often leads us to make decisions based on what's most top of mind, rather than what's most accurate. By grounding decisions in reliable data, you can create a more objective basis for your choices. 3. Create a bias checklist. Some companies even use bias checklists before making significant decisions. This checklist might include questions like, have we looked for disconfirming evidence? Or, are we considering recent events more heavily than overall trends? A bias checklist helps remind everyone to step back and consider potential blind spots. 4. Foster an open feedback culture. Finally, fostering an open feedback culture encourages team members to speak up when they notice biases in decision-making. Leaders who encourage feedback create an environment where people feel comfortable questioning assumptions. It's a powerful way to ensure that biases don't go unchecked. To wrap up this segment, recognizing and counteracting cognitive biases is essential for effective decision-making. By staying aware of confirmation, availability, and anchoring biases, and by actively seeking diverse perspectives and reliable data, leaders can make more objective and balanced decisions. Next, we'll look at how to balance data with intuition in decision-making so you can move forward confidently without getting bogged down in analysis. Stick around for insights from Amazon's two-pizza rule and other real-world examples. One of the biggest challenges in decision-making is knowing when to rely on data and when to trust your intuition. Data is crucial for making informed decisions, but over-relying on data can lead to paralysis by analysis, a situation where you have so much information that you struggle to make a decision at all. On the other hand, gut instinct is fast and can help us make swift calls, but it's also prone to biases and misjudgments. Kahneman's work shows that effective leaders understand how to balance data with intuition, using both to make thoughtful, agile decisions. Let's look at Amazon's two-pizza team rule as a prime example of balancing data with intuition. Amazon's founder Jeff Bezos noticed that when teams got too large, decisions slowed down due to endless discussions and over-analysis. His solution? Keep teams small enough that you could feed everyone with two pizzas. These small, agile teams could access data as needed, but weren't bogged down by excessive analysis. They had the flexibility to act quickly on instinct, make decisions faster, and iterate as they learned. This approach empowered Amazon teams to make data-informed decisions without being paralyzed by bureaucracy. It allowed them to test ideas, quickly assess outcomes, and make adjustments based on real-time feedback. The two-pizza rule has been a guiding principle in Amazon's rapid innovation and customer-focused approach, showing us the value of balancing data with gut instincts in an agile setting. So what is the takeaway? Sometimes simplifying team structure and encouraging quick decision-making can improve overall efficiency. Smaller teams make it easier to balance data with intuition, as there's less pressure to reach a perfect consensus. Plus, who doesn't love pizza? It's a win-win, great decisions and a fun team dynamic, all wrapped up in a couple of pepperoni slices. Another fascinating example is Google's 20% time policy. Early on, Google leaders encouraged employees to spend 20% of their time working on projects outside of their regular responsibilities. While this might sound like a gut instinct idea, Google approached it with a data-driven mindset, tracking its impact on innovation and employee engagement. This 20% time policy led to major innovations like Gmail, Google News, and AdSense. Employees used this time to explore new ideas that didn't initially have solid data to back them up, but Google's leaders understood that intuition and creativity often need room to flourish. By allowing employees to act on their gut instincts within a structured framework, Google struck a balance between data and intuition, fostering one of the most innovative cultures in tech. Google's approach shows us that sometimes intuition needs a framework to thrive. When employees have the freedom to explore ideas based on intuition, but within a supportive and data-aware environment, innovation can really take off. So, when should you lean on data and when should you trust intuition? There are a few principles that can help guide this balance. 1. Use data for high-stakes or long-term decisions. For decisions with significant impact, like entering a new market, launching a major product, or making large investments, data is essential. In these cases, taking the time to gather and analyze relevant data will provide a stronger foundation and reduce risk. 2. Trust intuition for agile or low-stakes decisions. When a decision isn't as high stakes or when speed is critical, relying on intuition can be effective. Quick, iterative decisions are often best served by gut instinct, especially when there's the flexibility to adapt and improve as you go. SpaceX's iterative design process is a perfect example of knowing when to use intuition and when to rely on data. In the aerospace industry, where precision is everything, traditional companies spend years on meticulous design and planning before ever launching a rocket. But SpaceX's approach is different. They use an iterative process where they quickly design, build, and test rockets, gathering real-world data along the way. By embracing fast cycles of testing and learning, SpaceX can innovate rapidly and solve problems as they arise. This approach requires a blend of intuition, knowing which design changes to test, and data analysis, evaluating what worked and what didn't. SpaceX's success in commercial spaceflight is largely due to this iterative, intuition and data-driven approach. For leaders, SpaceX's approach highlights the importance of flexibility. If your organization can handle small, incremental failures as part of the learning process, consider using rapid, intuitive decision-making alongside data analysis. This fail fast, learn faster model can be especially effective in industries where innovation is key. Let's break down a few practical strategies to help you achieve this balance between data and intuition in your own decision-making. 1. Set parameters for data collection. One way to prevent paralysis by analysis is to set clear limits on data collection. Define how much information you need to feel confident in your decision and then move forward. For instance, if you're launching a new product, decide ahead of time what metrics or market insights are essential and avoid collecting more data than necessary. This approach allows teams to make informed decisions while avoiding the trap of endlessly searching for more information. It's about striking a balance between thoroughness and agility. 2. Schedule time for intuitive thinking. Another strategy is to create intentional space for intuition. This could be as simple as a brainstorming session, where the focus is on free thinking rather than data. Or, like Google's 20% policy, give team members dedicated time to explore ideas and act on their instincts. By separating time for data analysis from time for intuitive thinking, you can give each approach its due attention. It's a structured way to encourage creative problem solving without getting bogged down by over-analysis. 3. Pilot and test ideas with data. For ideas based on gut instinct, consider starting with a small pilot or test phase. This allows you to use intuition to take a first step and gather data as you go. If the results are promising, you can roll out the idea on a larger scale. Amazon's agile small team approach is a great example of this. They often run pilots and quickly analyze results, allowing them to iterate rapidly. By testing ideas in a low-risk environment, you're able to balance intuition with data-based feedback. To sum it up, effective decision-making requires a balance between data and intuition. We've seen how Amazon, Google, and SpaceX each use unique strategies to find this balance, allowing them to move quickly while staying grounded in real-world insights. By setting data collection parameters, dedicating time for intuitive thinking, and using pilots to test ideas, leaders can make decisions that are both innovative and well-informed. So far, we've explored how to balance intuition with data and how to overcome cognitive biases, but effective decision-making goes beyond individual choices. One of the most powerful things a leader can do is create a decision-making culture, an environment where team members feel empowered to make decisions, seek feedback, and challenge assumptions. By building this culture, leaders can ensure that decisions are made quickly, confidently, and collaboratively, helping teams stay agile in a rapidly changing world. Let's dive into some actionable strategies for fostering a decision-making culture and look at examples from companies both large and small. 1. Encourage openness and transparency. The first step in creating a decision-making culture is to foster openness and transparency. When team members have access to relevant information and understand the rationale behind decisions, they're more likely to feel engaged and invested in the process. Openness also builds trust, as people feel valued and respected when they're kept in the loop. A great example of this is Netflix's culture of radical transparency. At Netflix, key decisions and strategic updates are shared openly with employees, creating an environment where everyone feels connected to the company's goals. Netflix leaders regularly host Q&A sessions where employees can ask questions, provide feedback, and gain insight into the reasoning behind big decisions. This level of transparency helps team members understand not just what decisions are being made, but why, and builds a sense of ownership across the company. Transparency isn't just about making information available, it's about making it accessible and clear. When people understand the why behind a decision, they're more likely to buy into it and make decisions that align with the company's direction. 2. Empower team members to make decisions. Another crucial element in creating a decision-making culture is to empower your team to make decisions independently. This means giving team members the authority to make decisions within their roles, without needing constant approval. When people feel trusted to make choices, they're more motivated, creative, and proactive. A powerful example of empowerment is the $2,000 rule at Ritz-Carlton. Employees at Ritz-Carlton have the authority to spend up to $2,000 to resolve guest issues without needing managerial approval. This policy allows team members to act quickly to enhance the guest experience, making them feel trusted and responsible for upholding Ritz-Carlton's standards. The result is a highly empowered workforce that can make decisions in real time to keep customers happy. Let's look at a smaller business example. Sweetgreen, a fast casual salad chain, is known for its emphasis on autonomy and empowerment at the store level. Sweetgreen's leadership trusts their local teams to make adjustments to operations based on customer demand or local preferences. This empowerment has enabled Sweetgreen to expand rapidly without compromising quality, as store managers can make decisions that cater specifically to their communities. This approach shows that you don't need a big budget or thousands of employees to create a culture of empowerment. By simply giving team members the authority to make decisions, small businesses can create a more responsive and motivated workforce. If you're a leader, think about areas where your team can make decisions without needing approval. Empowering them with guidelines instead of restrictions encourages people to take initiative and gives them the freedom to respond to situations as they see fit. 3. Promote a culture of feedback and open discussion. Creating a decision-making culture also requires fostering a culture of feedback. Leaders who encourage team members to question assumptions, share ideas, and provide constructive feedback create an environment where decisions are refined and improved collectively. When everyone is encouraged to contribute, people feel more ownership over the final decision and are more likely to support it. An inspiring example here is IDEO, the design and innovation firm. IDEO is famous for its open culture, where team members at all levels are encouraged to share ideas and critique each other's work. During brainstorming sessions, ideas are explored from multiple perspectives, and team members are encouraged to challenge assumptions. This iterative process of feedback and refinement has enabled IDEO to produce groundbreaking designs and solve complex problems for major brands worldwide. By promoting a culture of feedback, IDEO ensures that decisions are well-rounded and that every team member has a voice in the process. This open discussion approach makes teams feel more invested and allows innovative ideas to surface more naturally. To foster a culture of feedback in your team, encourage regular check-ins and brainstorming sessions. Create dedicated spaces for feedback and lead by example by asking for input on your own decisions. When team members see that feedback is valued and acted upon, they're more likely to engage openly and actively in decision-making. 4. Encourage calculated risks and learning from mistakes. One great example of this is Intuit's fail fast philosophy. At Intuit, employees are encouraged to try new ideas, knowing that not every experiment will succeed. Intuit uses a system called Design for Delight, where teams can test new products and features quickly, gather data, and either iterate or move on. This fail-fast culture has led to successful products like TurboTax and Mint, as employees are encouraged to test their ideas in a supportive, low-risk environment. Another example comes from a small business, Brewdog, a craft brewery from Scotland. Brewdog has become famous for its willingness to experiment with new beer flavours, brewing techniques, and even business models. They embrace customer feedback and frequently release limited-run beers based on experimental flavours. If a flavour doesn't resonate, they don't view it as a failure. Instead, they see it as an opportunity to learn about customer preferences. This approach allows Brewdog to innovate constantly, keeping their offerings fresh and exciting. By creating a culture where team members feel safe experimenting, Brewdog has established itself as a leader in the craft beer industry. To encourage a similar culture, celebrate experiments, even if they don't work out. When team members see that taking risks is encouraged and valued, they're more likely to think creatively and push boundaries, leading to bigger and bolder ideas. Think of it as being in a test kitchen. Not every recipe turns out great, but every experiment teaches you something. Sometimes you might end up with a culinary masterpiece, or at least a good story. To summarize, creating a decision-making culture is about more than just delegating choices. It's about creating a space where transparency, empowerment, open feedback, and a tolerance for calculated risks thrive. Whether you're running a small team or a large organization, these practices help build a culture where decisions are made confidently, collaboratively, and creatively. All right, as we wrap up today's episode on effective decision-making, let's take a moment to reflect on the main strategies we discussed. Decision-making is one of the most important skills for any leader, and building a culture where decisions are thoughtful, informed, and agile can transform a team's ability to navigate challenges. Here is a quick recap of the key takeaways. 1. Understand when to use System 1 or System 2 ways of thinking. We started by exploring Kahneman's concept of System 1 and System 2 thinking. Effective leaders know when to trust their gut instincts, System 1, and when to engage in slower, more deliberate analysis, System 2. From Ford's Mustang launch to Warren Buffett's investment strategies, we've seen how choosing the right approach for each situation can lead to smarter, more confident decisions. 2. Recognize and overcome cognitive biases. We looked at how biases, confirmation bias, availability bias, and anchoring bias, can skew our judgment and lead to suboptimal decisions. By actively seeking diverse perspectives, grounding decisions in data, and using tools like bias checklists, we can counter these biases. The story of Blockbuster missing the streaming revolution due to confirmation bias was a powerful reminder of the dangers of unchecked assumptions. 3. Balance data with intuition. Decision-making is about finding a balance between data and intuition. Amazon's 2-pizza team rule and Google's 20% time policy show how combining data with a structured framework for intuition can foster innovation. And SpaceX's rapid iteration process illustrates how quick, data-informed decisions can lead to extraordinary breakthroughs. 4. Create a decision-making culture. Creating a culture where decision-making is open, empowering, and inclusive is essential. Netflix's transparency, IDEO's feedback culture, and Brewdog's willingness to experiment all demonstrate the value of building an environment where people feel safe to contribute, take risks, and learn from mistakes. Even small businesses can benefit from these practices, as we saw with Sweetgreen's local autonomy approach. If there's one thing to remember, it's that effective decision-making isn't just about making the right choice every time. It's about building a culture and mindset that supports thoughtful, adaptive decisions. Each of these strategies, whether it's balancing intuition with data or fostering an open feedback culture, helps your team feel more confident and capable of making decisions that drive success. As leaders, we're not just responsible for our own decisions, but for creating an environment where every team member feels empowered to contribute to the decision-making process. Imagine the strength and resilience of a team that feels fully engaged, valued, and trusted to make meaningful choices. And remember, decision-making is a skill that grows over time. Just as we saw with companies like Netflix, SpaceX, and BrewDog, every small choice adds up to something bigger. It's a journey, one decision at a time, learning and growing with each experience. So embrace the process and trust that with each thoughtful decision, you're building a stronger, more adaptable team. After all, decision-making is like picking a restaurant for a group. Everybody has an opinion, and it's nearly impossible to please everyone. But with a little transparency, trust, and maybe a 2-pizza rule, you'll get to a decision that works for everyone. As a good friend of mine and former boss would remind me, Hannah, you cannot please all of the people all of the time. Absolutely true. Before we close, I'd love to hear from you. How have you approached decision-making in your own team? Do you have a story of when a big decision paid off, or maybe when you learned a valuable lesson? Share your thoughts with us in the comments or tag us on social media using #TheBusinessBookClub. Your insights could be exactly what another leader needs to hear. Thanks for joining me today on Leadership Unpacked. Next week, we're diving into building and leading with authenticity with insights from Dare to Lead by Lois Frankel. This next episode looks to elevate your team's trust in you as a leader and the organization you represent. Thanks for listening, and I hope you join me again.